What is up, Who Dat Nation? Chris Rosvoglou from Boot Crew Media here with John Hendrix, giving you guys another Saints pregame show. The Saints 3-7 going up against the Rams 3-6. Probably felt a little bit different when you came into the season. This is one you circle on your calendars, kind of that revenge game, thinking of the no call during the 2018 season. Different for both sides, both kind of underwhelming season so far. We'll see if either side could turn it around this Sunday. John, let's start off with the first thing, which is kind of the quarterback situation, which has been talked about in depth for the last couple of weeks. Dennis Allen saying he's sticking with Andy Dalton for now. Seemed pretty adamant about that. What's kind of the sense you've been getting? Because you look at the flip side, Jameis Winston with a really passionate kind of press conference yesterday when he was talking to the media, saying how kind of hurts his soul to not be out there and how he lost the job from injury. And what do you kind of read on this whole situation? Do you feel like there's kind of like mixed messaging going on? Or you just think it's, hey, look, these guys are competitors. It just stings not being out there.
I think there's truth in both of them. Look, I understand because the thing is, you can trace back some things, even though, and we said this a while back when we were previewing a game. I can't remember how many weeks ago, but Da saying that Jameis was healthy, but I told you, I said that he's not 100%. I mean, that was never the case, and he's still not 100%. But if a situation arose and he needed to play, he could go in there, obviously, and so. This offense has become lethargic. It's become kind of just dead in the water over the past couple of games. And, I think mixed messaging is where Saints fans kind of are struggling right now is the fact that, he said, hey, if things go off to the wayside, we're under the impression that a quarterback change was coming. And this is 2 straight games where the offense just does not look good. They can't run the ball. I get they're missing some offensive linemen and different things, but, you're just not effective in just about any way. The play calling has been a little bit suspect and such. So, look, I think if you're a Saints fan, you could feel for Jameis Winston. And it's funny because a lot of people that were, harping on Winston to be replaced in the first place are the ones that are coming back now and saying that he should be in there. But, that's a different story for a different day. But, look, I think this is a thing in the locker room and just things that you see that, look, Andy is a veteran in this league. He can get some jobs done, but he's got a different type of skill set and different type of approach than Jameis does. And so, I think getting a ground game will help either quarterback. And the thing is that, if he doesn't have a ground game, then you're kind of limiting what Andy Dalton can give you. And, he's not a gunslinger that should be throwing it 40, 50 times a game and going to get you 300-400 yards and hit a 50, 60-yard bomb every single play. I mean, that's just not how he's built. And so this offense was working for a while under him. But, look, Jameis still isn't 100%, and maybe after the bye week, but it might be too late by then. But, it's just an interesting conundrum the Saints have now that second straight year, quarterback problems after life with Drew Brees, and it just doesn't look like it's getting any better.
Yeah, and you mentioned the running game, and that's obviously going to be a big factor here for Andy Dalton if they're going to get this thing going. It's kind of hard to get the running game going when the offensive line is really banged up with the situation with James Hurst injured, Eric McCoy on IR. Pete's questionable, but we'll kind of see what happens there. I'm actually curious what you kind of think that situation is going to be for Pete, especially when you miss 2 practices and you're limited on Friday. But you look at this offensive line group, what do you kind of make of it right now? It's going to be kind of a makeshift group for now.
Yeah, I mean, it's Aaron Donald, right? You know how talented Aaron Donald is, and so that's a big ask for this team. So, I mean, you'll have Ruiz and Ramczyk still obviously on the right side, and maybe they could lean a little bit more on that side to run or get some things going. I don't know, and I'm just trying to think stuff like even the screen game. When's the last time we've seen some good screen plays executed, stuff like that? Just something that can help throw off some balance, right, and take some pressure off. But, look, James Hurst is out with a concussion. They're presumably going to turn to Landon Young again as far as it goes. And then as far as left guard, the last time I told you the plan was going to be to rotate Lewis Kidd and Calvin Throckmorton. We'll see if that continues to happen, because, there's some times where you see some good stuff out of both, but it's just inconsistent. And then Josh Andrews had that bad snap. He had an illness. So, again, that left side of the line is really where you're hurting. I don't think Andrew Speed will play in this one. Look, he was around in the locker room this week and such. And again, being limited to practice is one thing. Doesn't always mean that you're going to see the field because, again, the way we were looking at it, usually on Friday, you can get a pretty decent indication of who's going to play based off of who's taking what reps. And I don't think Pete is going to be that guy. So they're going to have to figure something out. This is a time where, we talked about it last week, getting a guy like Taysom Hill involved early. That didn't really happen. And when they did, it didn't go anywhere, but that doesn't mean you should abandon it. I mean, you saw the 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1 against the Steelers. he wasn't on the field. There's 3rd and 5 plays where you don't even have Alvin Kamara on the field. It's Adam Prentice running a choice route for you. I mean, that's just the types of things where you look at personnel and just the different things. There's just limitless ways to look at. And look, I think the offense is obviously a key focal point here, but man, between them and the defense, this team is just completely falling apart. Like they're a shell of themselves. They just have not been recognizable. Offense was on there for less than 47 snaps, I think, last week, and the defense was on there for 84. I mean, you can't win football games like that. And so I don't know. I think our tempered expectations and Tyrann Mathieu talking last week and just kind of said, right now, we're just not a good football team. They finally come to terms with that instead of trying to prove that, hey, we're still in this thing. And I get that nothing's been as far as division and stuff, but look, the offensive line has got to be kind of make a path, find a way. This is why you have guys like Doug Marrone on the coaching staff. This is why you have guys like Zach Strief. Those guys should get them ready for this game. And we know Aaron Donald and what kind of thing he commands, but you can't let him be a TJ Watt and take over this game. It just cannot happen. But based off of what we've seen, that is a real possibility.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And talking about Taysom Hill, the Taysom Hill thing's so interesting, right? Because it isn't as simple as saying, well, you run him 10 times, it'll be fine. Like, not every game's going to dictate things like that, like the Raiders game where he had 10 carries for 60 yards, or even the Seahawks game, obviously, where he took that over. But to your point, it almost felt like the last 2 weeks, tried it a little bit early, didn't really work. And I was like, all right, well, that's it. And so my question is, do we have to reach the point where it's like, all right, well, Taysom Hill's only a weapon for them if they're leading or the game's tied, whatever. And if that is the case, is that more so maybe they don't have as creative a game plan for him, or is this just kind of a struggle right now? Like, I'm just so conflicted by it because I was looking at his usage the last couple of games and I'm like, I know it's tough, but you got to find a way to get your best playmaker the ball, especially when we talked about it all year. The offensive guys haven't been healthy. The whole line's banged up right now. Landry's missed time. Michael Thomas has missed time. So what do you kind of make of that situation? Is one of those where I don't care if it's QB, wide receiver, tight end, running back, figure out a way?
Yeah, I think more in the red zone. That's really where I think we've seen him a little bit more this week. And I think that's where you look at. And look, I wouldn't, if Andy comes out and sucks again, I hate to say sucks, but just can't get the job done. I'm not so sure you don't turn to a Taysom Hill to start at quarterback the next week. And, this team just needs a jolt, a spark. Again, I don't think they're going to be capable of putting together a run and getting in the playoffs or winning the division or anything like that right now. But, if Jameis really isn't 100% and Andy struggles again, then Taysom may be an option that you look at and you have to. But look, I think for him, it's always been the short yardage, powers, goal line situations, red zone situations for him. But, I think this is an area where they need to get him involved more. And whether that's, as a decoy or something, I mean, this guy can affect the football game in more ways than one. We saw it against the Seahawks. We've seen it against the Raiders. It just baffles me to know that, see that, some of the plays that he's in, either it's not the right play call or they don't go to him or it's just ineffective. And so I think it's a three-headed monster in that aspect that, the right situation with the right play, with the right execution is always important there. But, even his snaps, I mean, this is a guy you need to get at least 20, maybe 25 snaps a game because of what he can do on the field. And it just seems like, ever since that, like I said, Raiders and Seahawks game, especially, that his usage has just been really suspect. And so, I think he's somebody you can get him the ball. But look, I'd say on the outside chance that things go really crazy, what have you got to lose if you turn to him at quarterback? If Dalton doesn't play well and, Jameis is still not ready to come back in or not 100% healthy.
Yeah, that would be fascinating. Heck, I would have been all for it if they wanted to try it this week just to shake things up. So, kind of keep it, flip it over a little bit to somewhat positive. Trevor Penning returning to practice this week. We're all looking for something to kind of look into with this season. Like you said, we got to change our expectations now. And I think one great thing that could come out of this season, if any, would be if Trevor Penning gets some snaps late in the year and he looks like he could be a franchise left tackle. And we'll have to see. It's a tough process, especially with the injury he had. But from seeing him at practice, do you feel like it's only a matter of time before they activate him? I know you only get that 21-day window. Would you imagine we'll see him at some point this season?
Yeah, I think it's definitely see him. And look, DA, just again, what we were told, he's doubtful this week. Be hard, but he is getting onto the practice field, doing a lot more drills with offensive linemen now. So that's where he's at, is that he's progressing in that aspect. And look, I mean, he looks good. He's moving around well. He seems like he's handling things, and for him, what I appreciate him about him is even going back to camp, he's so aware. Like, I mean, we knew coming in that when they drafted him, that pass pro was always going to be his big issue. But you get a guy like that in the lineup if a Hurst is not there, and even if you put him as a, jumbo guy, whatever the case may be, just get him some snaps because again, everybody talks about, well, this team doesn't have a first round pick next year and stuff. And look, you got Olave and you have Penning. Those are two guys that are kind of staples for your future. And I get it. You'd rather have probably maybe a first round pick this year, but that's just kind of the trade-off. But look, I think Penning, when he does get some action, it'll be really good to see, interesting to see. Again, I feel like it'll be bumps and bruises, especially because he hasn't been on the field just doing some stuff. But look, he was progressing in training camp. He's looked good against the Packers. He started, really figuring things out and is really becoming, one that you really are paying attention to and such. And so I would think that, I don't know if it'll be next week against the 49ers, but, if not, then pretty soon he should be back hitting the field. Maybe a 49ers game, but it'll just depend on, because he said it's day-to-day type thing. And so if we keep seeing what we're seeing, I mean, so far he looks really good, in shape, ready to go and hit some people.
All right. And look, we could all use some positive news. If he comes in at any point and looks decent, you can at least walk away and say, okay, the Saints have 3 rookies that look like they could be impact players for a while. That would at least be something to hang your hat on. This season's been so weird that Cam Jordan, for the first time ever, is going to miss a game because of an injury. Missed one last year, but that was him being on the COVID-19 list. What's that situation like? I saw earlier this week he tweeted. Everyone's like, oh, what's going on? I think it's very clear that had to do with that, like him maybe being frustrated they had to miss a game because he is a legitimate Iron Man, what he's been able to accomplish. What's that kind of been in the locker room? No Cam for this week. How weird is that?
It's weird, I mean, he got his eye gouged against the Steelers. He was wearing sunglasses after the game. I mean, this is not something simple or, little thing. And look, he tried to come back and he wanted to play and stuff. We didn't see him at practice, really didn't see him in the locker room. So that was kind of weird, just not seeing him there because Cam is such a big voice for this defense and such a leader, and obviously captain. And so, but it brings up a good point because they don't have Marcus Davenport either. They've got 3 healthy defensive ends going into tomorrow. That's Peyton Turner, Tano Pascal, and Carl Granderson. So they're going to have to call up. And I put it out there. I'm like, they have Jabari Zuniga and Nico Lalos on the practice squad. And people are like, who? And then that's kind of what the boat you're in. They could maybe throw Onyemata outside to get some interesting rushes too. But, but losing a Cam, you can't replace a Cam. I hope that he gets to finish his career in New Orleans with New Orleans. I would hate, with this team's going to have a lot of offseason questions. I mean, and it's going to kind of center around some of these guys that are a little bit older. Cam's been effective. I mean, he's been there. He's done everything you've asked and then some, right? And so not having him on a game is really going to be weird. But the others are just going to have to find a way to pick up slack just because, this season has been riddled with injuries, challenges, and, now at 3-7, you're just trying to get one, right? And it's no longer like, well, if we could just go on a run and hit 7 straight and get into the playoffs. No, it's just about winning one game. And Cooper Kupp's not going to be in there. I really feel like there's no excuse not to beat this team, but I felt that way against the Steelers last week, and look what happened. So we'll see if this is the I told people we're going to the wake tomorrow. We'll see if that's actually the truth or, if it's actually ends up being the funeral that we end up attending tomorrow for the season.
Well, that's a great way of putting it. So I ask you this because, I saw this week, which is just the weirdest thing. This is when, people are like very doom and gloom. And don't get me wrong. I'm a doom and gloom guy sometimes, but I've seen some people go, oh, they're going to get blown out by the Rams. I'm like, have you watched the Rams this year? Like they're just as bad as the Saints, honestly. And I look at these two teams, the way they've played the last couple of weeks. And, you talked about the defensive line for the Saints being banged up. The offensive line for the Rams is incredibly banged up too. So in the trenches, it's just going to be so weird. What do you think this boils down to this game? Is it as simple as, hey, look, don't let Aaron Donald just wreck the whole game, and if you can do that, you got a shot? How are you kind of assessing this matchup?
I think the biggest thing for the Saints is please, just eliminate the explosive plays. The Rams' rushing attack is not good. No Cooper Kupp, so that means you got Allen Robertson, Higbee, all these other guys, right, and stuff. So there is some talent there, right? But it comes down to, can you get a pass rush going against Matt Stafford and disrupt him? And make sure that you don't give those explosive plays, because coming into last week, Steelers didn't have any, and look what happened. They had all these explosive plays. And so, that's the big thing is the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, just put some drives together and get some points on the board at this point. It doesn't have to be touchdowns. Just get some drives sustained, put some points up on the board, get at least one touchdown. If you have 3 or 4 red zone trips, I think you need at least at least one touchdown if you're going every 4 on this team with the way things are going. And look, I don't think there's going to be a lot of points that need to be scored in this game because of how things are going. So again, I always talk about it. I think first to 24 may win this game. First to 20 may win this game just because of how bad these teams have been and kind of all the things going on. But I know the energy level tomorrow won't be as high. I've talked to a lot of fans and just have heard a lot of people selling their tickets, not going to be going to the games and stuff. So that hurts because, dome field advantage really won't be there. And visiting teams sometimes travel really well on that. And so it's unfortunate, but I get it, And so, just can you sustain some drives offensively, get some points on the board defensively? Can you just make sure no explosive plays happen and shut down the run attack and get after Matt Stafford? I don't think it's that hard, but this team tends to make those things kind of hard this season.
Yeah, they have. And my last thing here, John, before we get out, and I think this is something that a lot of Saints fans are curious about, and it's been a big talking point. If they play against the Rams and they lose in a fashion where the energy looks really low, people look disinterested, and that's a big concern because we've watched games this year the Saints have lost, and I don't think it was for the lack of trying. There are games that they just, couple spots here where they had meltdowns. If it happens again, where do you get concerned where it's like, where's the locker room at? Because you still have, after this one, I believe you still got 6 games left. So it's not like there's 2 weeks left. It's like, all right, let's just get to the finish line. It's like, no, you still have over a month left in the season. Where would the concern level be if that's what happens on Sunday?
I think big, because the thing is, I think the locker room is kind of held together by pins and needles and threads, if you will. And I don't think it'll get to the point where everybody just says, we just quit on this team. But, I've heard from some sources that there's some concerning things brewing in the locker room. I won't share those at the moment, but just that there are some concerns there. And I think DA really, because this talks about his future, right? If he loses out, I don't think there's any way you can keep this team together with him leading the charge, right? I think best case for him, if he can get to maybe 7-10, maybe 6-11, he hangs around for, a short leash next year. But that's just the type of thing that you're hearing is you don't want to hear people downplay and talk about DA and just kind of going through the motions or just questioning how he motivates or leads a team versus maybe a Sean. And we knew that coming into this year that's a hard shadow to live behind, right? And so, I'm really concerned if they lose tomorrow. I mean, again, that's why I say it's kind of like it could be a funeral for tomorrow. Is that efficiently, or it actually, in essence, would end the Saints for the season. Like if they lose tomorrow, then you practically could say, I don't know when this team might win a football game for the rest of the year, right? And so hopefully that's not the case, but I'm concerned that the locker room, not that it would just come apart, right? But you're going to have to start really assessing at that point that, I find you go back to something DA talked about during a press conference, is talking about the captains. It's not necessarily the captain's fault for getting a team done. It's kind of the head coach's job and the coaching, right? And so this seems a little bit, reading through the tea leaves, that there might be some things there. But, look, let's see what happens, because winning won't cure everything, but it'll be a nice step in the right direction to see that this team remembers how to win and such. But, there's a lot of questions to be had for this offseason, no matter what happens. If they went on a run somehow and got into the division race or something like that, there's still so many questions about DA's future and the way he's handled Jameis and the way that things have happened throughout these player management, roster management, just too many that has come across for a team that said, well, we were in a space and we feel like we're competing,
Yeah, and to end it, kind of here, you talked about if they don't win this game, where does it happen? The 2 games after this, at San Francisco and at Tampa Bay. So it would not get any easier than right here. And the Saints were actually, when the odds opened up, favored against the Rams, which kind of puts into perspective how bad the Rams have also been this season with their injuries and such. So we'll see what happens. Saints-Rams this Sunday in the Dome, 12 p.m. Central kickoff. We'll see if the Saints can get it done. And if not, I'm sure me and John will have a lot to talk about next week.
Tons.